Funding for this edition of State of Affairs with Steve Adubato has been provided by Holy Name Medical Center. This place is different. MD Advantage Insurance Company. The New Jersey Economic Development Authority. Valley Bank. The Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. Operating Engineers, Local 825. Fedway Associates, Inc. IBEW Local 102. Lighting the path, leading the way. And by Eastern Atlantic States Regional Council of Carpenters. We build tomorrow's workers. Promotional support provided by NJ.com. Small news, big news, true Jersey. And by Insider NJ.
Hi, I'm Steve Adubato. A very compelling interview with a state legislator who always speaks his mind. He is State Senator Mike Doherty from the 23rd District. Great to have you with us, Senator. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
Let's do this. We're taping on the 17th of November. It'll be seen after that, and including into 2021. Do you believe, right out of the box, as a significant, strong Donald Trump supporter, that Joe Biden won the presidency, not just in the Electoral College and in the popular vote, fair and square?
Well, I think we definitely have some election integrity issues here in the United States. We're seeing a lot of problems all around the country. We saw what happened in Philadelphia. You know, the idea that a governor, in violation of the U.S. Constitution, can rewrite the election laws and ignore orders from the U.S. Supreme Court, Justice Alito. What we saw where no partisan observers were allowed whatsoever. I mean, where in America can an election be held where you put the partisan observers in a quarantined area, you lock them out, you intimidate them? We saw that in Philadelphia, in Detroit. Now, these are not free and fair elections, in my opinion. And if you have nothing to hide, why are you not allowing partisan observers to take a look at what's going on? This is a real problem.
Senator, so many of your Republican colleagues have been saying as we do this program, Mr. President, it's time to step aside and help the transition. That's what presidents do. That's what President Obama did for President Trump, even though he didn't vote for him and didn't like him, didn't like his policies. Isn't there something to be said for the future of democracy, representative democracy, in helping the transition along?
Well, let's look at what happened in 2000. Where Al Gore contested the election for 37 days. It went to the U.S. Supreme Court twice. He didn't concede. So this is a presidential election. It's very important. There's been a number of issues. There's over 400 affidavits, folks that worked at the election polls that said there's problems here. We have somebody from Dominion Software who said that in an affidavit, she can go to jail for this. In Michigan, she said they were running the same ballots through the scanning machine over and over and over again. So
Senator, what's interesting, what's interesting, Senator, is I am sure you have a ton. You're a very good lawyer and a very good communicator. I'm sure you have a ton of anecdotal incidents and examples. But here's the question. You're a greatly respected member of the legislature, a public official. There are people watching this in January, February into 2021 who are now questioning, because of what you are saying, whether Joe Biden is a legitimate president. Is that the objective that you have right now?
Well, let's just take a look at what happened when Donald Trump was elected in 2016. We had from day one, we had resistance. We had the FBI setting up General Flynn. We had immediately the Russia hoax and the investigation with Robert Mueller. We had the impeachment based upon a phone call to Ukraine.
No one questioned whether he was legitimately elected president of the United States, but no one, including in the media, questioned whether Donald Trump, in spite of losing the popular vote by several million votes, he won the Electoral College. He got the same number of electoral votes as Joe Biden did this time. No one questioned it. Legitimate what you're saying, but the questioning of who wins is a different question of how you interact with that president, is it not?
Well, right now we're following the legal process. We're following the Constitution. And some of the close elections, there's a right for candidates to take a look, and that's what's going on. So I'm sure.
How long?
Well, hey, Al Gore had 37 days in 2000, so we're not even halfway.
For how long?
We're not even halfway.
In this global pandemic, for how long do you and many others question whether Joe Biden needs to get the mechanics and the operation of government and the presidency in a global pandemic functioning?
Well, I think Georgia, we're going to have resolution this week, right? And so I think when we go through some of these states and we see, and if the election results are confirmed and verified, then I think at that point, folks who support Trump will say, hey, that's Biden won the election.
That's fair. Thank you, Senator. I appreciate that. You know, you said something interesting. We do a series called Confronting Racism. The graphic will be up on the screen as we're speaking. And you've said this about systemic racism. The United States does not have systemic racism. It is an evil lie. We must have the courage to oppose this wicked, baseless allegation. Go ahead, please.
Sure. Well, in my experience, I've been in all walks of life. I've been in the military.
And thank you for your service, Senator.
Well, it was my honor. I've been in politics. I've been in big business meetings. And all I've seen in all of my experiences is people wanting to do the right thing, to pick the best person for the job. And I have never, ever seen anybody say or do anything to disadvantage somebody based upon their sex or their race. I have never seen it. Now, there may be bad people out there. There may be people that do bad things, but the system in the United States is set up to be fair to everybody. And that's been my experience. And I felt it was important to say that at that time. This is a country, a majority white country, that elected Barack Obama president twice. Now, if we had a systemically racist country, a man who grew up with, not even having his father around most of the time, to become president of the United States and be elected and reelected by a majority of a country that's majority white, how can there be systemic racism? So this is an evil lie that's been perpetrated. The system is not, there's bad people, but the system is not systemically racist.
Sure. So when you saw George Floyd for those 8.5 minutes with the knee on his neck from a high-ranking official in that police department and several other police officers watching, how many times have you seen that with someone who's white or non-black, with Breonna Taylor? We can go through the litany. Are you saying that those are just incidents and there's no pattern?
Like I said, I think there's some bad actors, but if you actually look at, and I know we don't really have the first. How many bad acts in your mind? How many times someone who's black and brown at the hands of police who we have great respect for? Let's not talk about defunding the police, not the issue. But you do not see that systemically or consistently with those people who happen to be white, like you and I. And so you're saying that's all just a bunch of incidents, isolated. Well, actually, if you take a look at the real numbers of who's shot by police, there's actually a lot more white people shot in America and killed by police than there are African Americans.
There are a lot more white people in the country than black people, but disproportionately, you know that black and brown people are more victims on the other end of this kind of racism than whites. You know that, right?
Steve, who runs these cities? Who runs these police departments? And so there's if you're saying there's a problem, then maybe there's a problem with the
saying there's a problem. You actually do not think that people who are black and brown who have COVID at a disproportionate rate, who are hospitalized at a disproportionate rate, who die at a disproportionate rate just by chance?
For a country like the United States, where you have people coming from all over the world, different races, different religions, there's no country that's fairer. Now, of course, you're going to have some problems every once in a while. There's no country that's fair and provides more opportunity. That's why people continue from all over the world to want to come to the United States and live the American dream.
What gives you reason for optimism as we move forward, Senator, in these very polarized, divided times?
Well, I don't know. I don't know that there's a lot that gives me optimism. I see a very divided country. And as a matter of fact,
how do we come together?
I don't know that we're coming together, frankly.
Do you want us to come together?
Excuse me?
Do you want us to come together and compromise?
I would like the country to come together, but around what principle?
Around the principle of justice, around the principle of treating people equally, around the principle of solving the COVID problem, just for a start.
Okay. So I think Donald Trump, a lot of the issues Donald Trump talked about as president, also Bernie Sanders talked about those as well. I mean, we have corruption everywhere in the United States. I mean, just look at the idea of flash trading, where the folks on Wall Street, they can find out you, Steve, if you're buying or selling your stock, and they can jump ahead of you, and they can do this millions of times a day to basically fleece money from American citizens that are trying to save a little for their retirement. This is something, so the country, yeah, we can rally around that. Let's stop the criminals on Wall Street from ripping us off, okay? And I would work with Bernie Sanders to make that happen. But you know what?
Fair. Senator, there is reason for optimism.
Well, that's what Donald Trump was all about. That the system.
Let me ask you this before I let you go. Do you believe Donald Trump's public communication, primarily over Twitter, the name calling, the mocking of people, including reporters with a disability, are you saying that you really believe that helped bring the country together for 4 years? The calling people names, the mocking and the demonizing of people, the enemy, we're the enemy of the people in the media, that brought us together?
It's not the way I would have done it, but
no, not at all. You're a perfect gentleman.
The issues that he brought up, the endless foreign wars. I mean, I supported him on the issues. He wasn't the perfect vehicle, but the issues of the selling out to China, sending our jobs overseas, right? The American worker, average American worker making $30,000 or less, the endless foreign wars, killing our young men and women for what? Donald Trump stood for all that. And the greatest thing he didn't do is he didn't start any more stupid foreign wars, right? So Donald Trump should get a pat on the back for that.
Senator, before I let you go, I've said this every time you join us, whether in studio or remotely, you are a class act. You always conduct yourself. You never call people names. You conduct yourself with dignity and integrity. Do you believe the president, the outgoing president as we speak, that his rhetoric, his tone, his demeanor has been helpful to bringing people together?
Well, I wouldn't have done it that way. I think once you're president, you don't need to use a sledgehammer to communicate. People are going to listen to you when you start talking because you're president.
Yeah. Well, people listen to you, Senator, and I can't thank you enough for joining us and representing a point of view that a lot of people have, whether they agree or not. Thank you so much, Senator. Best to you and your family.
Thank you, Steve.
We'll be right back after this.
To watch more State of Affairs with Steve Adubato, find us online and follow us on social media.
We're now joined by New Jersey State Senator Nicholas Scutari. He's a Democrat. He chairs the Senate Judiciary Committee. And let's just say this is about the 10th interview we've done about the legalization of marijuana with the senator. He has been the architect of this legislation, this law, which is it a law after the vote in November, Senator?
Yeah, it'll be a constitutional mandate. So, yeah, it will be the law of the land.
What exactly is the law? Because there are lots of pieces to it that are not just the legalization of marijuana, but the process that legalizes it and how it plays out. Please share that.
So through an SCR, Senate concurrent resolution, we placed on the ballot certain language that the voters approved by about 67% plurality in New Jersey, which legalized or allowed the legislature to prepare a framework for the legalization of marijuana in New Jersey, beginning by January 1st of 2021.
Okay, so here, is this what's in the legislation right now? 15% of licenses for cannabis industries go to people of color, is that correct?
Yes.
15% to women and veteran-owned businesses, correct?
Yes.
25% micro businesses, what does that mean?
Well, a smaller level of cannabis cultivator and retail sales. So people with a little bit less capital that'd like to be in the space would have a better opportunity to open that kind of a shop without all the necessary capital that a full license would be.
And 25% of the businesses in, quote, impact zones, end quote, towns with 120,000 people or more that meet the specific demographic criminal justice measures, impact zones established by the federal government. Why is that important, Senator Scutari?
Well, I mean, we worked with advocates, lawyers who represent certain civil and social justice groups, and that was the best that we could come up with in order to try to put money back into and create jobs in the very areas that were the hardest hit on this failed prohibition against marijuana.
Okay, we're taping this on the 17th of November. It'll be seen after. Any roadblocks you see in making this law implementable, if you will, and installed in 2021?
I don't think so. I think there's been a great dialogue between myself and the Senate President, the Speaker, and the Governor's office, and we're at the finish line. I think we've put together a very comprehensive and complex piece of legislation, but one that touches all the right buttons, and I believe it's going to be well received.
Is it fair to say, Senator Scutari, after all the conversation we've had about this, quote, the debate is over?
Well, not yet. It's close. There's still some people that are really having difficulty coming to grips with the fact that marijuana is going to be legal in New Jersey, and they're resisting even the regulatory framework just because they don't believe in it. But the debate essentially is over.
The economics of this, we actually check out our interview on steveadubato.org with several interviews with Governor Murphy, where he talks about the economic implications of this. Can you talk about that, Senator, the economic benefits to the state?
I think the least of which is the tax revenue that we're going to realize, but I think that's an important aspect of it, that people are going to have to pay a tax on a product that right now is widely available without any taxation rate. Some of that money is going to be dedicated to important areas in need. But most importantly, I think, is the job creation. There's any number of different license holders and people that are going to have an opportunity to be involved in this industry. Just recently, I rewrote legislation as it relates to employment. And with that is another opportunity for employment, a drug recognition analyst, which will be something that's necessary in order to ensure that people aren't on any particular job under the influence. So that's a whole nother industry right there within this one.
Quick follow-up on this. Racial and social justice issues. You're going to see a graphic right now on the screen. And it's a series we've been doing called Confronting Racism, an ongoing series of conversations dealing with a whole range of issues regarding race and racism. Black people are 3.5 times more likely to be arrested for marijuana possession than white people. How does this law impact those horrific numbers?
I think the bill in and of itself is the epitome of a social justice reform just in and of itself, because those arrests are going to stop. And I think that that's extraordinarily important for communities of color and communities that have been impacted on the war on drugs. Suffice to say, it's not just people of minority status. There's plenty of other people, Caucasians as well, whose lives have been screwed up as a result of this prohibition against marijuana. But I think particularly those statistics are borne out. And so I think this is a really amazing step in the right direction.
Senator Nick Scutari, who chairs the Senate Judiciary Committee, he has been the architect, the leader of this initiative to legalize marijuana in the state of New Jersey, a national debate as well. Senator, thank you so much for joining us.
Great to be back as well. Good to see you.
You got it. We'll be right back after this.
To watch more State of Affairs with Steve Adubato, find us online and follow us on social media.
We're now joined by Jenny-Brooke Condon, who is professor of law and director of the Equal Justice Clinic at the Seton Hall Law School Center for Social Justice. Professor, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
We're taping this right before Thanksgiving 2020. It will be seen after that. So let me ask you, the term constitutional crisis is often talked about. Let's hope that when this airs in 2021, there's an inauguration on January 20th. There is a President Biden and there's a transition. Should that even be something we're talking about, or is that just an anathema in American democracy?
Well, Steve, I think throughout this period in which the term constitutional crisis has been spoken and questioned, for the last 4 years, I think one of the institutions that has been reassuring throughout that time has been the federal judiciary. And so I think we can put a lot of stock, even during periods of crisis, that the court's commitment to the rule of law, our Constitution as a source of stability and restraints upon all three branches of the federal government, is a reason to be reassured that both we've come through a period of a lot of challenges and impeachment, a lot of questions about excesses under the Constitution, but we've come through them. And I think as 2021 starts, we can continue to put faith in our judicial system and the courts to raise many of the most critical challenges facing our country and issues of public importance into the new administration.
But Professor, let me ask you this. I mean, your area of expertise, your research is centered on human rights, immigration law, prisoners' rights, constitutional law. The Supreme Court, as we speak right now, into 2021, there is a 6-3, quote unquote, conservative majority. So respectfully, my only question is, you talked about moderation. You talked about the courts playing an appropriate role. Justice Alito just spoke out publicly for one of the first times about politics, about political ideology. It's very rare for a justice to do that, or associate justice to do that. Here's my question. Why are you so confident that there will be this equilibrium on a highly conservative, Trump-dominated court?
Well, I have faith in the court to protect our democracy and to ensure that it works as an institution that doesn't produce a constitutional crisis. But do I have a lot of concerns about a 6-3 conservative majority court shutting off access to liberty and access to equal justice for some of the most vulnerable members of our society, and increasing the power that corporations and so many others are often given free rein and under even the current court before we've seen the change to the 6-3 majority. So I am not in any means sanguine about the challenges that we face. I think for social justice advocates like me, one of the realizations is that the court is not the answer to all of our social problems, and we need to build a multifaceted strategy for social change that includes empowering communities, looking to the state courts. New Jersey has a incredibly effective and accomplished and respected state Supreme Court. And so the battle for improving rights is not, we don't put all of our focus on the US Supreme Court. We need to build broader coalitions and movements for change beyond the court.
Well, respectfully, Professor, I'm sorry for interrupting. It is the court of last resort. And when it comes to the issues we're talking about and the most vulnerable populations with a 6-3 majority, conservative majority, if it is the court of last resort on a whole range of sensitive, difficult issues, what is the recourse for other courts? And should they be anticipating that possibility or that prospect of the court of last resort moving in a certain direction? I'm pointing left, but I really mean right. Do other courts adapt or adjust or anticipate? Or do they just administer the law?
Well, I think courts, we have state courts and lower district courts that are called upon to resolve the vast majority of the questions and legal disputes in our legal system. And so yes, the issues that reach the Supreme Court are some of the most contentious and important, but a lot of justice is delivered throughout the system. Should we expect, given the current makeup of the court, that there is going to be a more conservative direction? Of course. And will that mean real damage and pain for a lot of individuals? I believe so. But I think throughout our history, the court has gone through periods of change, and the long-term strategy has to think about, if the Democrats are serious about doing something about the lack of equilibrium in the court, I think they should pursue those strategies. But I think advocates like me and individuals need to think more broadly beyond the Supreme Court as a way to improve our country, democracy, and our legal system. Before
I let you go, do you believe that, dare I use the term, packing the court, which Franklin Delano Roosevelt attempted back in the 30s into the 40s, do you believe that the Democrats, if they pursued that, is a dangerous precedent to set and a dangerous direction for our country?
I think we're currently in a potentially dangerous direction, given the lack of equilibrium on the court and all of the critical issues that can be decided by the court, and all of the, in my view, the rollback of progress that we've seen in the court. So I think we're already in that dangerous moment. Would expansion of the number of justices
say 9 to 12, would it help?
Yes, I think it would. I think we all have to recognize that it could create a cycle of retribution by the Republican members of Congress.
And expanding the court.
What's that?
And potentially expanding the court in the next administration or a next administration.
So I think, there are no easy answers, but I think there's some interesting strategies out there that I've seen some proposals about increasing, the age of or setting an age of retirement and adding a small number of justices and having it done in a way that makes sense to provide equilibrium. But I think the real problem here is that the Republicans in Congress have not followed the norms related to the court, and it would be a real tragedy for the Democrats to not credibly consider options to protect the rights of Americans.
Professor, compelling conversation. I promise we'll have you back to follow the U.S. Supreme Court and the impact it's having on our citizens and our country. Thank you, Professor. Appreciate it. I'm Steve Adubato. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you next time.
State of Affairs with Steve Adubato is a production of the Caucus Educational Corporation. Funding has been provided by Holy Name Medical Center, MD Advantage Insurance Company, the New Jersey Economic Development Authority, Valley Bank, the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, Operating Engineers, Local 825, Fedway Associates, Inc., IBEW Local 102, Eastern Atlantic States Regional Council of Carpenters, and by these public-spirited organizations, individuals, and associations committed to informing New Jersey citizens about the important issues facing the Garden State, and by Employers Association of New Jersey. Promotional support provided by NJ.com and by Insider NJ.
Data shows that many patients have avoided seeking critical health care in the wake of COVID-19 for fear of contracting the virus. Delaying medical care can have serious consequences, so you should never second guess or ignore your symptoms. At Holy Name Medical Center, we have measures in place to prevent infectious disease from spreading. We're clean, we're open, and we're safe for all your healthcare needs.